friends in Ireland, their their connections to various events of Irish interest in the city.
And what church was this?
It was St. Francis of Assisi, not one that would be mentioned in the list of prominent Irish parishes, but it had an old community of people. Flatbush was settled, oddly enough, by the Dutch, and it remained very Dutch up until the 1850s. And then the Irish began coming in as tenant farmers and farm laborers, but the Dutch sold a lot of their land to the Irish, and many of the farms by the late 1870s became Irish owned. So it was really a community of a lot of Irish farmers, and this was the old element. And this remained that way, very strong Irish parish, and the people of this population remained there up until the 1920s, when they started selling all the land for the housing boom, and they made a fortune and they moved on. So what I inherited moving into Flatbush, or being born in Flatbush, was later comers. And there was a break in the community of Irish. The old farmers were gone, and the new guys didn't know much about what had preceded them. But Flatbush was so Irish at one time that the equivalent of the mayor of Flatbush, which was a supervisor, was Irish born, in three of them in a row. They dominated Irish politics in Flatbush in the 1880s and 90s until consolidation with Brooklyn.
And yeah, and then by the 1920s, you had that huge influx coming over from Ireland.
And they were a different crowd entirely.
Yeah. So would you consider your upbringing sort of normal for your generation in terms of being an Irish American, Irish Catholic American? Were your parents involved in Irish things, or just the
They
church?
were, they met in an Irish dance hall. They liked Irish things, and
Dance
later
hall.
on, they joined a group of. They had an Irish Musicians Association that was in Flatbush, and we attended that very often.
And what was the dance hall? Did it meet in Manhattan or in Brooklyn?
Oh, it was Brooklyn. There were about 5 or 6 of them in Brooklyn. I think Aaron's Isle was the most popular one.
Okay. And so do you think that sort of growing up in that Irish atmosphere, like consciously or unconsciously, did that give you this sense of wanting to learn more or hold on to what you knew as an Irish enclave?
I think I had an exaggerated view of being Irish. I thought the Irish were a much more numerous nationality than they were. And my father thought the same way. I thought we were an empire growing up, but it turned out that we were just a tiny little island with a couple of million people.
Oh, you mean in not just the Irish in New York? You thought Ireland as a country and well, that's so funny. I know my father used to tell us we were the descendant of kings.
I don't think we made that
No, I don't.
rank at all. We
No.
were, and sure, we were descendant of peasants.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that's for sure. And so how did you get interested in collecting things about the Irish, or trying to gather more information about the history and the culture?
Well, one day I wandered into a used bookstore on Flatbush Avenue in Flatbush, and I discovered a couple of Irish books there. And one of them was a biography of Father Theobald Matthew, who was born in Cork, and he led the temperance movement. I think that was the first Irish book I ever bought. But after that, I just bought everything in sight. It became an addiction. And later on, I just went from one place to another. At first, the bookstores on 4th Avenue. And then I used to go
Or
to
Manhattan? Fourth Avenue in Manhattan.
Manhattan, right?
Yeah.
And they had wonderful bookstores there. Nobody was buying Irish books. It didn't, the 19th century, New York was a publishing center in the 19th century for Irish books. And a lot of the books that they couldn't publish in Ireland or wouldn't were published here. A lot of radical tomes on um, uh, the Irish were printed in New York. So you got a real slog of Irish nationalism in New York City just by reading the books alone.
Were your parents political at all? You speak Irish, but did they speak Irish at home?
My father was a fluent Irish speaker,
Okay.
but my mother wasn't, so it was difficult to learn Irish. I got a very good vocabulary, but you know, my father was in the wrong place as an Irish speaker because all his relatives were in Boston. He had to come down here because he couldn't find a job.
Okay.
And so he was out of his element, and it was a big thing when the people came from Connemara, where he came from, and visited us, because then I heard Irish for the first time in a long time, because there was nobody for my father to speak it to. He did speak to me in Irish, but not enough so I became fluent.
Hmm. And what about did you go to a local high school? Did you go to Catholic school, college? Were there predominantly Irish Americans that you grew up with and went to school with?
Yeah, the grammar school was kind of mixed between Irish and Italians. One half of the neighborhood was Italian.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to St. Francis College, this was founded by the Irish Franciscans. They had come in the 19th century, and they banned most of the parochial schools in Brooklyn, and they brought a very strong sense of Irishness, particularly to the college. There was a huge collection of Irish books, so I was right at home. I spent more time in the library than at classes. I wasn't so much interested in that, but I loved the library.
Were you a history major?
Yes,
Okay.
and the books were just unused. Nobody was reading them. This was a time when there wasn't a lot of interest in Irish things, and I think there was kind of a time warp. Most of the books were 19th century books, or published around the time of 1920, and then that was it.
And so you found these books. Now, did you just you leave them at home? Do you keep them at home? Did you just start collecting? You told me you've gone up and down the East Coast. I mean, one thing leads to another type of.
I go up to Boston, and I go down to Washington, and all these books were available because there wasn't a lot of people out there collecting Irish books. So I got some really gems of Irish history, and later on, I guess I'm jumping ahead, but there was one bookstore on Fourth Avenue, Dauber and Pine, and I got a call from Dauber one day, and he said, "I got a big collection of books from the Irish World, which is closing its office," which was nearby there,
What
near
year was
Fifth
this?
Avenue. Pardon me?
What year was this about?
I guess it was in the 70s, sometime. So I went over there, and it was amazing. Half the books had Patrick Ford's signature in the margin, and or other prominent Irish people. There were dedications from Michael Davitt and so on. This was a prime collection of books that had been sold to Dauber and Pine. So I bought practically everything, and they were very reasonable. I could afford it at the time. And then he called me a little while later and said, the Irish World is getting rid of its office. You can still go over there and see if there's anything left. Well, I rushed over to the Irish World office, and they had never thrown anything away. It was stocked full of everything Irish, all the bound volumes of their newspapers, all this ephemera, letters, ledgers, and amazingly, they had the records of the the Irish Land League. The Irish World was a medium for collecting money for the Irish Land League, and they raised a lot of money. And the original books were there, lying in on a shelf. So there were two sisters, the Ford sisters. They were descendants of Patrick Ford, and it didn't seem that they were too swift. They were elderly. I thought they might have been a bit chapeau-ju, as they
Yeah.
say in Irish, a little bit on the way to senility. They didn't seem to appreciate. They had a great name, great history, but in my opinion, they didn't seem to appreciate what they had. They had a treasure house of Irish stuff. So I said, let me make a pile of the stuff I want. And I thought they were going to throw out the ledgers from the Irish Land League because they didn't seem to know anything about what was going on. I said, I'll come back tomorrow, and if there's anything that you want, you take it out of my pile and I'll take the rest. When I came back, those ledgers were missing, but everything else I loaded into the car, and there was a lot of stuff. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened to the rest of that huge office building. It had not an office, no, the whole building, but a large room full of newspapers and everything else. I don't know what happened to it. I've never been able to find out if that was totally lost or it's somewhere in a library. But those ledger books, I'd love to see them again.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So you were never able to track down where the sisters lived or, and
Well, I don't think it would have done any good.
yeah,
As I say, they were not really familiar with Irish things. They were actually working on the production of the Irish World, but in the last days of the Irish World Weekly, they were pasting it, literally pasting it, taking articles from Irish newspapers that were 6 weeks old, and using a photo copy process, running them straight in the newspaper. It was a sloppy looking weekly. It was one of the worst looking newspapers in the end. Had such a glorious history. At one time, it was the largest weekly newspaper in the United States, had the largest circulation. It had a terrific reputation, even in Ireland. They used to say that the British customs people had a favorite question because the Irish World was so radical. They would want to confiscate the Irish Worlds. So the question was, do you have any liquor, cigars, or Irish Worlds? You had to declare Irish Worlds because they weren't going to allow that in.
Oh my gosh. So you're collecting these things, you're gathering things you realize are valuable, and someone like the sisters not really understand what's going on. Are you storing all this in your house?
Yes, I had a good basement here, and unfortunately, that's the bad part of it. There was plenty of room down there. The house had never flooded since it was built in the 1920s, but Superstorm Sandy came and destroyed a good portion of it. Curiously, the only bound volumes that I saved, there were about a dozen of them, I had put in these large plastic bins. And so when the flood came, they floated on top and they were saved. But almost everything else was pulp.
And is what you were able to salvage, is that what you brought over to NYU?
No, that was a magnificent thing. Marion Casey came as the rescuer, and she arranged for NYU to take all these damaged wet documents and bring them over to NYU, where I believe they actually put them at one point in incubators to dry them out.
Like
So
ducklings.
whatever is left, it's a lot of ephemera. They saved it all, and they did a wonderful job. Thank God that NYU Archives was around, because I don't know what would have happened if that resource wasn't available.
What, yeah, I mean, and I, Marion, you like recognizing the value, Kevin Rich recognizing and Marion recognized the value of the deposit records from the Immigrant Savings Bank. Without that kind of eyeball looking at what's out there and saving it, I think all that is lost to history. So you are traveling up and down, going to bookstores. Do you run into other people, overlapping? Are you developing a reputation as someone who's on the lookout for things Irish?
Yeah, I was known as the Irishman, even though born here. Uh, uh, with the dealers, I was the person that wanted to buy anything Irish. So they would call me from time to time. I was getting a lot of stuff that would come by mail, as well as at ephemera shows, a lot of paper shows that I used to attend. And then gradually the pickings became a little smaller, and I found out that I had a competitor, and it was none, none other than Mick Maloney. And I think Mick Maloney probably had a bankroll, which I didn't have.
Yeah.
I think he was supported by institutions, and I
So
was the scholar of book, the poor scholar.
he was, so he was collecting more than just sheet music and songbooks and,
He was omnivorous.
yeah.
He got everything. So I figured, well, it was time to quit, and I had run out of money anyhow, because had gotten married, there were kids, and there was tuition, and
Mhm.
so I fortunately actually had to sell a lot of the very rare books to Boston College and to Notre Dame.
Wow.
It included a lot of very rare Gaelic language pamphlets that I
Mhm.
believe didn't exist anywhere else in the world. Thankfully, I sold them before the flood, so they were
Yeah.
all saved, and they're now in their very fine libraries.
Yeah, obviously I love the archives of Irish America at NYU, but those are two other good depositories for your,
This was before NYU, so
oh, okay, fair enough. There you go. So what was the first publication? What was your first published piece and what was it about?
that was called the Flatbush Irish.
Mm-hmm.
And I had joined in the 60s the Hibernian Division, and it had been around in Flatbush since 1879. And what happened was it was, as I described before, the old people that were the farmers and their descendants, they had moved away. The new guys didn't know anything about the records. Well, there were no records. There was nothing. I think they had a couple
No
of books,
minutes, no attendance records, nothing?
nothing. Um, they had a couple of odds and ends from the 1950s, and that was it. All the original records from 1879 were gone. I attempted to find them because I thought it might have been in the original parish where they met,
Mm-hmm.
Holy Cross. And I didn't get much cooperation from the people there. They weren't too interested in the Irish anymore. So I don't think they really did a good search for the records. They may have been stored somewhere there, but they were lost.
In the
So I did the research based on newspapers, going to the library, and I actually have a big revision of that, which runs about 150 pages, but I've not been able to publish it. So maybe someday it'll be published.
Well, you don't think it's ready for publication, or you
I
just
think
haven't
it's
found
just about ready. I even have it printed off. It's just that I don't have the resources to do it.
it to actually do it? Okay, fair enough. Um, so what's your favorite resource when you do your research? You've got all this stuff that you've collected. Do you draw on that, or do you go to other sources for your research?
Well, my favorite resource was the weekly newspaper, The Irish Advocate. And the Irish Advocate was founded by John O'Connor, who came from County Kerry. And it was a very chatty newspaper. It described in really big detail the events of the meetings and people, and there was a lot of chit chat columns. So
Mhm.
it's an enormous source of genealogical information.
Mm.
And I also had the bound volume, so I had about 100. Oh, that's another story. I knew Jim O'Connor, who was the I guess proprietor or partial proprietor of the newspaper. He had a little office on Park Row, and it was the tiniest little office. It was more like a closet than an office. And there was only one day a week where they would be busy. The rest of the time, he was sitting there in his upholstered chair, which was the only thing that he could fit into that little closet. And I'd knock on the door, and he'd say, "Yo!" He was back in the army again.
Hmm.
And I had to be careful when I opened the door. I didn't push him out the window when he would go down 14 floors. It was so tight in there. But I got to be friends with him, and he invited me over to his house in Jamaica Estates. And that's where Carroll O'Connor, his uncle of Archie,
Carl
and
O'Connor, the actor,
actor,
the
yes,
family. Okay.
he used to write for the Irish Advocate, Carroll O'Connor. Well, Jim let me look through the newspapers that were stored there in the house, and I was able to arrange with the New York newspaper digital project to get the books carried out of there and up to Albany, where they were going to digitize it. But I think they ran out of money, so in the end, Carroll O'Connor paid for the digitalization of the newspapers complete, and
This is for the Advocate.
on the Advocate. And at the end of it, I got a call, I guess, in behalf of Carroll O'Connor, saying if I wanted the newspapers, come and get them. Otherwise, they were going to throw them out. So I
Oh.
made 2 trips to Pennsylvania and brought them back to Brooklyn. Unfortunately, all but about a dozen of them were destroyed in the flood. But I
Oh.
still have a selection.
But they're digitized, so that's cool.
They are digitalized, yes.
And are they housed in a library where upstate, or just available on any library that,
Well, there's a website called Fulton History,
okay?
and it's a free website, and they have the Irish Advocate. I don't think they have every year, but they have a good run of it, and it's very difficult to use their their browser. But if you get the hang of it, you can get a lot of gems out of that. And it's the reproduction is not that great. It's hard to read sometimes. The print is small, but if you're lucky enough to get a good issue where they photographed it correctly, you have an amazing treasury resource there.
What is, do you have a favorite nugget that you've pulled out of one of those newspapers?
Well, I came across a lot of relatives. Some of them, you know, they're mostly cousins, distant cousins that were involved in the Irish American activities in New York City in the 1920s and 30s. And I was surprised to see their names there. Also, I was able to base a lot of the research that I've done on articles. Oh, the great thing was it had wonderful digitalized, rather illustrations of. Well, there weren't a lot of illustrations, but those illustrations that they did publish were interesting because they were pictures of old football teams, Irish football teams, county teams, meetings, principles of organizations, politicians visiting from Ireland. It was a tremendous photographic archive. What I did was I digitalized over 1,000 of these, and we've been using them ever since in our New York Irish History Journal. So
Yeah. Yeah.
people are seeing these things that wouldn't reproduce at all, I think, from the digital copies that they made from the the digital,
What they put
file.
online, yeah.
I can't think of the name of the,
Oh, so you photographed from the original, and
Yeah.
that's what we, because I think, I think the illustrations in the journal are fantastic, the ones you and Frank select every year. I didn't realize that's where they were drawn from.
yeah, most of them are.
Yeah. Um, so, so what you're saying is you're going through that, you really get a feeling for the community reading
Yes.
these papers. What do they have, like communions and celebrations and visiting
The
dignitaries?
parties of people leaving for Ireland, arriving from Ireland, all these details that are lost. And most of the descendants don't even know about this,
Mm-hmm.
but they're great pieces of their family history that are in the pages of the Irish Advocate, also to the other weeklies to a lesser extent. But the
Mhm.
Irish Advocate was the best for covering the social news.
And who was the editor? Was it one of the O'Connors or,
It was originally John O'Connor,
okay.
and
And did they-
his descendants took over from it.
Okay, that's what I wondered, if they kept it in the
Carroll
family.
O'Connor had a part in it in the 1940s, and he used to write a column while he was over in Ireland studying with I believe, the Abbey Theatre.
Really? And just talking about his experiences over there as
Yeah,
as an actor?
Yeah,
Oh, that's very cool. Very cool. Um, okay. So you love the newspaper. What are, you wrote the book on the parade? Was that, you were commissioned to do that one, right? The
yes.
250 years?
I wrote actually the two books on the parade. One was a chronological history of the parade that I did for the parade committee, and then eventually Quinnipiac University, in connection with the 200th anniversary of the St. Patrick's Day Parade, they did a hardbound volume, and so there are two histories of the St. Patrick's Day Parade. I found that to be fascinating because it was a way for the Irish to show their physical strength by parading in the streets of New York. And they were it was an entirely different parade in the 19th century and up until the 1930s. It was what they called a people's parade. There were
Mhm.
no floats, almost
Like a
no
proper parade by the
And
definition
it
of
was just
parade.
very serious-minded people marching.
When you
And
see,
they had to be well dressed in regalia.
Mm.
And the object was to prove to the non-Irish community that they were respectable people,
Mm,
that they weren't the stereotypes that they were often depicted as in the press.
mhm. Yeah, I've often thought the parade is a reflection of the politics within the community too, that effort to be shown as belonging, and then all the other things down through the years from, the unrest in the north and appointing women as grand marshal. It's kind of it's a unique social uh, parade exhibit of what's going on in the community.
Right, and all the conflicts that occurred
Mm-hmm.
in Irish politics and American politics, many times they're reflected in the history of the parade. So it's good New York history as well as Irish American and Irish history.
Mm-hmm. Um, okay. Do you have memories of the parade yourself? I mean,
I
you
do,
must have
as a
gone as a
kid, I was
kid.
always
Yeah.
dragged over there. I didn't
Bragged.
appreciate it much. Didn't
Must
appreciate
have
it
been,
much.
even as, or as you got older, or even as a little kid, you didn't
No,
like.
I liked the parade, uh, and especially when the two counties where my parents came from came down, because that was what we waited for. It was the highlight of watching the parade. You can only watch so many uh, city services march down the avenue.
Right,
Gets
right,
very repetitive.
right.
But when your home county came up the avenue, that was special. And so once that happened, we left and we got our corned beef dinner, which I was looking forward to.
did you go home for that, or was there a bar that you went to, you
No,
know,
it was,
a pub?
we found some restaurant somewhere.
Oh, so was it always somewhere different, or did your family have a favorite place?
No, anywhere we could fit in because they were all crowded.
And so you were just observers, you weren't marching, your parents weren't marching in the parade?
No, I didn't march until years later,
Okay,
and
all
that
right,
was with the Hibernians.
okay. Um, so newspaper is your favorite source. What was the most interesting, or do you think most significant thing you uncovered in all your years of research, either ephemera, something you found in the newspaper, something that surprised you, that you're like, oh, can't believe this.
Well, there were so many things, when you get those little stories of, there was a period there in both World War One and World War Two when they were reporting the deaths of servicemen.
Mm,
And a lot of these people were active in the Irish societies, county societies, Hibernians. They were
mhm.
well known to the people in the Irish community. And then all of a sudden, and I reading these newspapers religiously, I was familiar with a lot of these people, even though I'd never met them.
Right.
But when I saw the obituary appearing in the 1940s or during World War One, I could understand just how grievous this loss was for the people that actually knew them. This was a very sad time for uh, the war years. A very, very hard thing for people to bear, and they were often immigrants that hadn't enjoyed American life too long, but they were very patriotic and went off to serve our country.
Right. And then pass. Yeah, if you that's interesting, because if you feel that emotion as an observer all these years later, the impact on the community reading it must have been many times more.
Yeah, and then there are all the other little stories about robberies and people getting lost as immigrants, people that couldn't speak English when they arrived, and even times when they had to provide court translators in the Irish language.
Oh. In the Irish language, really? And
It was
you're
rare,
talking
but it
like
happened.
a famine period, like at least a third of those who came over were Irish speakers. So,
Yeah, well, it was estimated in 1850 that about 5/8 of the people were native Irish speakers.
wow.
And oddly enough, the Roman Catholic Church took no notice of this. Services were not at all in Irish or any parts of services. Maybe you could find a priest to hear a confession in
Mhm.
Irish, but publicly, the Irish language was not being used in the so-called Irish parishes of New York.
Mhm.
Um, and
So this is because pre-Vatican II, everything was in Latin, but you mean like in the sermons
the
or,
homilies, yeah.
okay. Okay, not like the Italian or the German churches or the Polish churches. Okay.
Curiously, the proselytizers, the many of them Baptists and Methodists that believed in reaching out to evangelize the Irish Catholic community, they were very strong for a while in the 1850s and 1860s and 70s, using Irish speakers to hold meetings in the Irish language. And that attracted a lot of people because it was the only time that the Irish language was being used in public. So you
Mhm.
had these proselytizers apparently having some success in attracting people that wanted to hear their own language, or perhaps couldn't understand English. There were probably quite a few people in the 19th century that were not conversant in English.
Did you see in that period of time, either Irish language or Irish to English language classes for people who wanted to adjust to America?
No, I don't think that was necessary. Uh, it was people that wanted to learn Irish, people that realized that something big had been lost. And
Okay.
so um, you had a school of Irish that was founded in the 1870s by a man named Michael Logan, and he
Mhm.
founded later on the first regular publication in the Irish language on Gael. And
Ah, okay.
um, it there's a story there, but it's too long to.
Okay, for another time, maybe
Yeah,
for the journal.
yeah.
Um, all right, so I'm jumping back and forth a bit. So you start collecting all this ephemera, you're collecting books. When did you start to realize that this was something you needed to do, where it becomes your mission to collect things, to come up with the round table over at Angela's Bookshop? Like when did it become apparent to you that this was an important thing to keep doing?
Well, I think it became emphasized when I realized that New York as an Irish community was disappearing,
Mm.
and I could see that in my own time
Hmm.
because I lived in Flatbush, and it was a neighborhood or neighborhoods that were experiencing demographic change. So I lived in several parishes. That was the old term of describing geographically where you lived.
Hmm.
And in each case, it was the same story. The Irish moved out or died, and that was the end of it. And there was no legacy in those old churches. The
Hmm.
new people that came in, they couldn't have cared less.
Right.
I'll give you an example um, of a parish in Brooklyn, St. Patrick's, Kent Avenue, which
Hmm.
was down near the Navy Yard. This was a tremendously strong Irish parish. It had 12 or 15,000 members, and the pastor, who was born in Ireland, used the church as an Irish organization. He raised money for famine relief, for land league, for anything that was going on in Ireland, and he appointed his ushers and people that worked for the parish as his representatives, and they went door to door collecting. So they made a list of everything that they collected. So the powerful pastor, who was Monsignor Tafe, his name is still there, recorded at Tafe Place. Nobody knows who Tafe was, but he was the Monsignor. And St. Patrick's was the big parish, but it gradually lost as the last days where it was successful was in the war years, World War II. It was busy. It was an industrial neighborhood, but there was still a lot of Irish. And then gradually after that, people just seemed to leave. A lot of people going to the suburbs, more going to Holy Cross Cemetery involuntarily, but that's where they were going.
Hmm.
And uh, unfortunately for St. Patrick's, it just diminished to almost nothing. Now, I knew the pastor, Father Rogers. Father Rogers was a black priest, one of the early black priests, tremendous man. He had a very deep appreciation of the history of not only Brooklyn, but of the Irish.
And
And he
what
was
year
very
was this?
proud. Pardon me?
What year was he the pastor, Father
He
Rogers?
was there in the 60s through the 70s.
Okay. Wow.
And his nickname was Buck Rogers. The other priests used to call him Buck Rogers. I don't know why. But he was a great man. And there has been follow up lately because he's appreciated even today as a wonderful pastor. But I remember talking to him in the rectory, which was a wonderful place. It looked like it had been unchanged since the 19th century. You imagine Father Tafe sitting there in a big easy chair, surveying his realm. But Father Rogers took many hours to talk to me about the parish. And what happened was the last Irish organization to survive was the Ladies Hibernians. And I have a prediction. If there are two divisions, a men's and ladies division, the last one will be the ladies because they hang on much longer. And they were still going in this very dilapidated neighborhood until the 1950s. And then poof, they were gone. And that was the end of St. Patrick's. I used to go back to St. Patrick's, but they had the problem that spells doom for any Irish parish. It's called a roof.
Oh,
And once that goes, they can't repair it. Too expensive.
too
So
expensive.
eventually they merged St. Patrick's, Kent Avenue with the neighboring parishes. They closed it altogether for services. And when I used to go by, it looked like a derelict building. There was garbage in the yard. It was a tragedy. And I was about to write a nasty letter to the bishop when I read in the local weekly newspaper that they had destroyed the building. They had just leveled it overnight. And it's
Without
gone.
notice,
nothing left to
notifying
St.
anyone. Hmm.
So
And
that's the story.
well, so these Hibernian associations, the ladies and the men, no records there. Did Father Rogers, let you look in
There's
any?
nothing there.
Nothing there.
No, the only thing he had was a couple of journals that they published in the 1890s that you really wouldn't want to show anybody because there wasn't exactly ethnic good feeling at the time.
Okay.
And but he was amused by it. He thought that it was very funny that these people that didn't have much to say for themselves were looking down their Celtic noses at other people.
Yeah. Well, captures a moment in time though, doesn't it?
It does.
The baptismal records in those old churches are interesting too, I bet. That would show you the transition of the community from one ethnic group to another. I've seen that in the Bronx, where you go from Irish to Hispanic names.
Yeah, there's a couple of parishes that even entered the place of origin in Ireland.
Really?
Yeah.
In the baptismal records?
Marriages.
Marriages.
Yeah, there's only like there are just a handful of them.
Right, right.
The fact that it was noted at all is amazing.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you an obvious question. I mean, why do you think it's important? The work that you do is important, the work that the Roundtable does. And we can talk about the beginning of the Roundtable. Was there a session at Angela's where, a group of you got together and said, we need to start holding on to some of this information and writing it down, or it's
I
gone?
don't think it was my feeling alone. The people that founded the Roundtable realized that this was all disappearing before our eyes.
Mhm.
One Irish neighborhood after another was disappearing. And no one would have guessed that there's practically nothing left. Maybe Woodlawn,
Mhm.
you'd still have a little bit of that left there, but I can't think of anything in Brooklyn that
Mhm.
it's all gone.
Right.
And this happened very quickly. And I think the people who founded the Roundtable realized they better do something fast because it's going to go like a will-o'-the-wisp.
Mhm.
And so a lot of the people came together to tell their stories, their individual stories. There were a lot of people that were very proud of their Irish genealogy. So
Mhm.
we gained a lot from that. And NYU, I know, did a lot of interviews with these same people. So
Did.
it's preserved.
Yeah. I think, well, Marion would know better. I know she's with us, but there are at least 400 interviews that we collected and stored over there. Do you think it's, well, are most of the people who founded the Roundtable, like yourself, grew up in an Irish community and recognized its disappearance because the kids were moving out or they had no interest, or records were being lost or tossed as people moved away? They weren't holding on to,
Yeah, I
the
think
albums.
I think they realized that because they saw the old neighborhood disappear and there
Mhm.
was no place to go back to anymore.
Mm.
They also, the amazing thing is that when a neighborhood was predominantly Irish, you didn't have to be that first generation to feel that. And I noticed it in Flatbush that some of those people that were descendants, then there weren't many of them that went back to the farmers. they regarded themselves as completely Irish. And even though their Irish ancestors had been dead for 100 years, because the community was Irish and there were so many people to associate with that were also of Irish background, they felt that they were still part of an Ireland abroad that
Mhm,
really hadn't changed. I think that's something you will never get again. Maybe Woodlawn still.
yeah, maybe Woodlawn. But it's, yeah, it was kind of unconscious. Pete Hamill said something in a St. Patrick's Day essay where he said, we grew up, we were Irish, our friends were Irish, the kids we went to school with are Irish, our parents were, their friends were. He said there was no conscious self-identification, you just were, because it was all around you. So you didn't have to work at it. It wasn't an effort to preserve it. It just was. So I don't know. I think you're right. There aren't too many places like that.
An Italian American friend of mine told me that his mother, who was from Italy, she referred to her own people, the Italian people, but she said when she talked about everybody else, it was always the Irish. And that wasn't just the Irish; it was the Anglo-Saxons, the Germans, everybody.
They were
Was,
the other,
was
they were
loved.
the Irish.
The Irish were the name for everybody else.
Oh, that's pretty funny. One last question, then I think we'll open it up to everybody else. Do you have a favorite period of time that you researched? The Gilded Age, the post-famine period, the 20s, post-war?
I like the 1920s and 30s, and also the period that you researched so well with the post-war immigrants.
Yeah, the
I
50s,
find that really fascinating. That was kind of the last gasp, that
right?
last big immigration that came in the 50s, trickle in the 60s.
Yeah, that wanted to stay and be American. I mean, you had the 80s, the New Irish, but they were a different group.
Yeah,
But yeah,
because they weren't coming to an Irish community, to an Irish neighborhood. They were scattering all over the place.
yeah, they were scattering and they weren't sure what they wanted to do. They
Yeah.
were kind of transients.
We
So,
had to teach them Irish songs.
hmm?
We had to teach some of them Irish songs.
Yeah, well, there you go. Um, okay, I think I'm going to unmute this. Let me see, cancel. Okay, I think everybody, how do I unmute this? Can you unmute yourselves? Let me see, unmute. Ask all to unmute, yeah. All right, great. So I will open it up, remove spotlight. Hold on, I don't mean to remove spotlight. Okay, so now there's everybody. Well, thank you for hanging in. Does anybody have any questions for John?
I
First of
was
all,
going
thank you,
to
John. Yeah.
ask John, what kind of farmers were they in Brooklyn? And were they also in the Bronx?
Yes, they were really everywhere. And they don't get much play, except a couple of years ago in Brooklyn, there was
What were they farming?
a book called Cabbages, and I can forget the title, but that dealt a lot with the Irish farmers.
Of
They were-
cabbages in Kings County.
Yeah, that's it. I knew Marianne would know it. Uh, the they were produce farmers, a lot of them, because they were close to market, and they did raise pigs. And in fact, here's a funny story. The Irish were famous for their pigs, and the neighborhood that was very prominent for the raising of pigs became known as Pigtown. Now the Irish left this neighborhood, and the Italians moved in, and everybody said, "Oh, the Italians live in Pigtown," and there was kind of pejorative because, well, yeah, they brought pigs. It wasn't the Italians; it was the Irish that brought the pigs, and they got the name Pigtown from the Irish.
Oh, Tom Mulaney.
Okay, anybody else?
I'm actually working on this at the moment. I'm building on that book, John. It's really, really interesting. And I mean, you find in 1860,
Mhm.
you know, there's a farmer in Westchester and from Ireland who has, he's worth $100,000 in 1860.
Wow.
John, could I ask you a question?
Yeah, just let Marion finish, yeah?
I'm sorry, I thought you were
That's-
finished. Okay.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to say that I'm picking up on the, as usual, on a thread that John pulled, brought it to my attention, that book of cabbages in Kings County, and it's really worth mining. And I'm working on that.
Okay, I'm sorry, who wanted to
Bill,
ask?
Bill McCooey, I want to
Hi.
ask John a question which not necessarily connected with this, but John, you talk about the Dutch being out there in Flatbush. Now, where you live, there's a church on Garrettson Beach there. Now, is that an old Dutch church that's right there? But I can't tell you exactly where it is. Is that too far from where you live? Between the old and the new?
It's just down the block, but it's a Lutheran church.
I thought
Because there were a lot of Germans and Scandinavians that came to this neighborhood.
I just wondered where they came from. Okay.
But as far as the Dutch Reformed Church goes, when they established Holy Cross Cemetery, which was right in the middle of Flatbush, the Dutch farmers turned out to block the first Irish funeral. And they had put up barricades and blocked the road. Well, the Irish retreated, but then did a circle around the Dutch and secretly buried the first guy in the Holy Cross Cemetery. And that's how the Holy Cross Cemetery came about. The next day, the Dutch found out that the Irishman that they didn't want buried was already in Holy Cross Cemetery. And that was the story. That's why Holy Cross Cemetery was allowed to exist, because the Irish surreptitiously buried the first guy.
What was their hang-up, John, with the Irish burying their own dead?
Well,
What
you know,
was the problem?
it had been a Dutch community, and they were used to that. They had a long tradition of everything being Dutch, and it was just another break in their
Okay.
tradition and power. And they didn't like the Irish anyhow.
Yeah,
John, didn't Joe Solinante, one of our members, write a book on the Irish in Holy Cross Cemetery?
Yes, he
One-
did.
You did.
John, I have another question. Now, you're writing the book about the Irish parishes in Manhattan. Now, are you still working on that book? And if so, what parishes are you going to be covering?
I didn't intend it to be a book, but I'm working my way north. And I'm not going to cover every parish because a lot of them are similar. But, you know, I'm up to about 42nd Street.
If you get your journal, John, I think this was the third installment, John?
Yeah.
His series on Irish parishes. So he just, the latest was St. Joseph's on 6th Avenue, St. Veronica's, St. Bridget's in Thompson Square Park, and a couple of others that have been closed, but it's really kind of fascinating.
Are you using Find My Past to do any of that research?
Um, I use Ancestry, and I use the newspapers.com.
Mhm.
No, the reason I ask is I use it frequently. I teach Irish genealogy with a group out in Minneapolis, and I'm head of their education committee out there.
Is Find My Past a good source?
Yes, it is. It will give you birth, deaths, and marriages. I've been looking at St. Gabriel's, which is where my dad was baptized. His father came over in 1901. His mother was born here.
I was going to write about St. Gabriel's, but I thought that some of the other parishes were too close, and it had been completely pulverized. So
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
all through, some of it went up to Riverdale, John. Some of the,
Oh, yeah.
some of the interiors, yeah, some survives.
Oh.
What do they keep? The altar or the stations? What do
Yeah, and some of the stained glass and things like that, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, but the church is gone. It's the Midtown Tunnel now.
And it's been gone for a good while. I remember my readings.
I have a question.
Couldn't hear.
Go ahead, Henny.
Henny, hi, Henny Majeski. I have a question. The Irish that came over to Brooklyn in the 1860s and settled in certain parishes, were parishes sort of county specific from Ireland? My Irish, for instance, one of the people in my Irish families came to St. Paul's on Congress and Court. I have no idea what county they came from, and I'm wondering if people congregated with each other, if they were specific to counties.
It was sometimes the case that a county dominated a parish. The first parish in Brooklyn, St. James, which is pro-cathedral, it was heavily Donegal. Even the little cemetery that is there, you kind of get an idea that there were a lot of people from Donegal. But St. Paul's, I think, had a big mix. But further down Court Street, there were a lot of Galway people that settled there. And there was also a peculiar colony, it wasn't peculiar, but you didn't find it anyplace else. They were from specifically Clifton and that area of Galway. So, but you can find that in many areas in the city. And I kind of made a study of this. Where do you find parishes that have a predominance of one county? And in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, the fourth and seventh wards, which were over by the Brooklyn and Manhattan bridges, there were a lot of Cork and Kerry people there. And further towards the center, there were more north, or everybody else was west of that.
Oh, thank you.
I have a question, if it's okay.
No, go ahead.
Sure. If you mentioned St. Patrick's Parish, by the way, my wife's family came from there for generations. They were very close to it. But my own grandparents and great great grandparents back to the mid 1800s were from Red Hook, which in its day was a very Irish area, visitation parish, which by the 50s, I think a lot of the Irish had cleared out by then. Are you aware of any history about visitation parish?
I know that they have a big reunion every year for St. Patrick's Day. Still,
Yeah, it's been on my mind to contact them just to see that. The Redmond Funeral Home was there for generations, and I know one of the descendants of the Redmond who kept all the records from funerals. So I have to touch base with her just to go back to the 20s and the 30s to find the names.
well,
Can I just say something, John?
sure.
There's no archival collection on Irish funeral homes. So if Kevin Riley has a contact, that stuff should be channeled for research. That's a small business operation, but the Irish are known for pubs and funeral homes. We need that.
I'll pass it along.
They're the last two enterprises that the Irish will have in any neighborhood, the pub and the funeral home.
That's,
Usually across the street from one another.
Right.
They help each other out.
Hey, St. John, could I ask a question?
Is Ed?
This is a departure from parishes in New York City. But you said that at a certain point you had to sell off books and things that you had collected. Some of it which you sold to the University of Notre Dame.
Yes.
Did you sell scrapbooks of old photographs to the University of Notre Dame?
No,
Okay, they've got some that they can't recall how they got them, which are interest to me, but I'm just trying to figure out the provenance of those things. Okay, thank you.
no, I only sold books to Notre Dame.
Okay.
John, may I ask a question?
Yep.
Yeah, Tom Mulaney here. Sometime back in the journal, there was an article about John DeVoy and the end of his life and his staying with two sisters on 107th Street. When he did pass, there was a funeral mass held at Ascension Church on 107th, at the same block. In your collection, do you have anything related to that day and that mass?
Not specifically on that, but Ascension was a great Irish parish, and the pastor, whose name I don't recall, was at the center of a nationalist movement. Yeah, that was a big Irish stronghold.
You know, the coverage that I could find, there was tremendous turnout for the mass. They said there was over 1,000 people out in the street, and my father, who arrived in 1926, was at that mass. That was our parish up till 1954. So if you're working your way north, I hope you get to Ascension.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's one of those that I've already started collecting bits and pieces on.
Thank you.
But the only thing is I have to live to 110 if I'm to finish this series.
I have another question, if you don't mind. John, have you noticed kind of a neighborhood succession where people migrate from one neighborhood to another? My wife's family, St. Patrick's Parish, Bed-Stuy, a whole cluster of them moved to Flatbush, same parish, Little Flower. My mother's family, my grandmother's family from Red Hook, a lot of people migrated to Bay Ridge. Now, this is just general knowledge on my part. I'm wondering whether there's more information, kind of a pattern.
I lived in Little Flower for many years, and I never noticed people's origin from St. Patrick's, but that it was something people didn't talk about, where their families came from. It's there's like for example, the west side of the Greenwich Village. Like everybody from there seems to have, or a good number of them seem to have come from County Clare. So whenever I meet somebody that says, "Oh, my parents were Irish," or grandparents, great grandparents, and they came from the west side of Greenwich Village, I always say, "Well, what part of County Clare did they come from?" And I'm almost always right. They had a strong area there, so something like that would tie people together.
The oven, okay.
Maybe that's why people from St. Patrick's just followed one another.
The other thing, Kevin, is the extension of the subway lines. I mean, yeah, when Bay Ridge opens, people just move south, and it was still a waterfront community, Norwegian and Irish.
Yeah, the R train created on a Bay Ridge.
Yeah, yeah.
Would it have to do too with more affluence, generation to generation, as people, if they stay in the city, moving into a better neighborhood, going to a different parish?
Not always affluence, Linda, but just sort of horizontal mobility, better housing stock, more modern,
Okay.
and still the ability, the train allowed you to commute to work. Yeah.
So, yeah, better quality of life kind of thing. Parks, better space.
Well, that's why you saw such a tremendous move out of Brooklyn in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Everybody went mostly to Long Island, but New Jersey, other places. And Brooklyn became a shadow of what it was ethnically.
Don't forget the bridge to Staten Island.
What was that?
Don't forget the bridge to Staten Island.
Yeah.
That emptied out Bay Ridge. Yeah.
Well, if you go back far enough in the 1900s, people didn't have cars. So I think they were moving up in a way in their version of the suburbs, still within Brooklyn, but it's where they could get to. And of course, for work, where they could get from.
Yeah.
The other thing is that the Irish population kind of moved south in Brooklyn. And, when you look at the Irish population of New York City, you see them starting out in the center, downtown New York, and then kind of spreading out across the river to Brooklyn and up to Midtown. And then even further and further, they keep moving further and further away from that old center. And then they're on the periphery. They're in Woodlawn, they're in southern Brooklyn, they're in eastern Queens. And, you know, it's no longer a cohesive community. That's why they don't have meetings anymore in Manhattan of Irish County organizations, or very few, because it's more difficult to get into Manhattan than it is to drive to someplace in Westchester.
By the way, I'm sitting in Breezy Point right now. If you want to know a still Irish neighborhood, it's right here, generations deep.
Interesting.
Keep that water between you and the rest.
Yeah. My grandparents moved in when they were young, and we just never left.
It's interesting.
It's like, here
Good.
comes coffee. Here,
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, this is, if you can hear me, Ed McCarthy calling from Alexandria, Virginia, without a camera. And I just wanted to say that listening to John today was such a richness, if you will. He and I had conversations some months ago when I was attempting, it's so far a abortive effort to retreat what I wrote about 60 years ago about the Christian Front and Father Coughlin. And he just provided me with some, some insights and recollections. He had talked to fellows who had been involved in the activities that went on in Brooklyn at the time. And, I much appreciated that and wish, and who knows, maybe I will get around to making more use of it than I have. But he also just today just awakened some other recollections about things that I had written about back in the 60s and 70s. So I just wanted to just express that appreciation again, John, to just say what a great resource you have been for the Irish and New York history.
Thank you, Ed. That's very much appreciated. You got a great topic there, the Christian Front and Father Coughlin, a really interesting era, but it's very difficult to deal with it without prejudice.
Indeed.
John, that reminds me so much of our basically the Round Table's godfather, Dennis Clark of Philadelphia, who's his wife's family. Do you remember this? His wife's family was very much pro Coughlin, and Dennis used to rub it in her face for the rest of her life.
Oh. Well, not the only family.
No.
what was that story? Father Coughlin, I can't remember.
Wow.
Second coffee.
If anyone else wants to say something, I'd like to just say that without John Ridge, I wouldn't be who I am today. He is basically the foundation on which all my subsequent work has been done, including the Nose for Archives and the curiosity about the local and sort of the small people, not the big picture, the small picture. I've just treasured everything, my friendship with you, John, and I've learned so much from you, so much.
So nice.
It was nice, very nice.
Here's the thing, Marion, I appreciate that very much. But you see, whereas I can look at the little things, only people like you and Linda can interpret it. Because I read your last book and it was just, why didn't I see that? In fact, I think I even sent you an email. Why didn't I see that? It was, I can't see the forest for the trees. So I'm no good at interpreting anything. And I'm glad I've helped somebody because I need a lot of help myself.
Well, it's always a partnership. And when you were telling the story about the Irish world, which I had not heard that before from you, it reminded me of Dorothy Hayden Cudahy's basement was a treasure trove and had to go someplace. And like you, I just had to bring it home. And where to put it? Where do you put it? And that's collection number 1 in the Archives of Irish America, you know?
Right.
And just for those of you who don't know the backstory on Hurricane Sandy, we got really lucky. We got so lucky, John. NYU Libraries was on high alert, right? But they thought that they would be needed for the medical center's records on First Avenue. They thought that's what would flood and that's where they would be needed. So they were sitting here like 2-3 days after the storm hit with nothing to do and everything ready. And I'm like, ting-a-ling, I have a collection, Arts and Beach, that needs to come in. And they're like, okay. And there we go.
It was heaven sent.
Yeah, timing is everything. It's always meant to be. That collection was meant to be preserved.
The best part was to see those documents in the incubator.
Oh yeah, and the freezer, they froze some stuff that they couldn't deal with right away, and they had other stuff on drying racks. It was amazing, the operation. Amazing.
Is that,
We got lucky.
is that for the mold? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You kill the mold? Oh, my God.
it's one of the many preservation techniques they're using these days.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was on the ground, John will remember, it was Ziploc bags and masking tape. That was like the number, and Sharpie markers. That was like how we did it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever it takes.
I have a story that's an amazing coincidence about that storm. The newspapers that were in the basement were all destroyed. They were pulp, and we just loaded them into garbage bins, and off they went.
It was
But
heartbreaking.
about a month after that, it was kind of a cold, snowy day, and I was coming in the back entrance to the house, and there was a little scrap of newspaper with a picture on it. And, they didn't have a lot of illustrations in the Irish Advocate, but it was from the Irish Advocate. I mean, there were like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of pages that were destroyed and just cut to shreds. But I just happened to look down, and I picked up this article, and it was on the post office in my mother's hometown, Ballinolea, County Longford.
Oh my
It was the only one that survived. That is a coincidence. Was it a message? I don't know.
And you remember that it was like in a Rubbermaid dish, a Rubbermaid dish. You had the minutes of the St. Patrick's Society of Brooklyn that also floated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. An amazing.
That was the first thing I grabbed because I didn't want that to be lost. That somebody could write a wonderful article on that.
That's amazing.
So can I just add to that conversation on Hurricane Sandy? It's kind of a question. So I reached out to New York City Police Records as part of Freedom of Information Act. Like, I guess all of us, I have saints and sinners in my family. So I was trying to get some more information. And the records were flooded by Hurricane Sandy, and they put me off. It's got to be over 10 years. I went back again, and still they said they can't get the records. Has anyone heard of that? Because I would think that also might be a treasure trove. It's not uniquely Irish, of course, but it's New York, and it has stories in there.
Municipal archives where offsite storage was on the river, Industry City there, and between the Belt Parkway and the East River. So I'm not surprised if some stuff might have flooded, and I'm also not surprised that 10 years takes time for the city to get around to things.
Yeah, so I'm going to write to them again and see what their plan is.
They're usually not the top priority when it comes to.
And by the way, I'm Kevin Harrison. I didn't introduce myself. Apologies. So
No,
That's okay. We can see your name, Kevin. Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you. And I'm Holy Cross Parish in Brooklyn. That's where I was born. Lived there for a couple of years. Family left Brooklyn, and we ended up in Queens, where I grew up.
What parish there?
St. Gerard Magella in Hollis.
Okay.
I'd
Oh.
like to say something. Hello,
Yeah, go ahead.
this is Ann Garvey. I want to thank John. He spoke so many times
Oh,
at the seminars for the American Irish Teachers Association and the Irish American Heritage of the City Board of Education. We had seminars, and John was always a wonderful speaker. He would present things that were so down to earth and in such a way that was charming and would bring a smile to us. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful time. And I'm so glad that John was able to do those lectures. So thank you, John.
Thank you, Ann.
Really
And
great.
do you remember the bus tour of the Irish American teachers that we had?
I wasn't on that
it-
bus tour. For some reason, I didn't
Oh.
make that bus tour, but I heard about it.
Well, we were in the narrow streets of downtown Manhattan, and the bus got stuck. I thought, I thought we were going to still be there to this day. I don't know how that bus driver ever got it out of there, but we never attempted another bus tour.
Well,
But
I
it-
heard
it was a good
kudos
one.
for you for that bus tour after. So it was one of my regrets that I couldn't make it.
Oh, my gosh.
So you've added another dimension.
Thank you for that, Anne, because we didn't get to John's prowess as a tour guide for the different sections of the city.
Especially the cemeteries. They were wonderful trips.
Cemeteries, yeah. I love cemeteries. Like,
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
They call Calvary, or they used to call Calvary, the city of the Celtic dead.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If it's okay, maybe we can collectively put our heads together. It's about the origins of the round table. Because you mentioned it earlier at the start, Linda.
Right.
Uh,
We talked about it as being sort of bubbling up through Angela's bookstore.
Angela Carter's bookstore, Keshkarigan on
Mhm.
Chambers Street. I think, John, was it Chambers Street?
Absolutely.
Or
If it
Broadway.
wasn't for Angela, there would be no round table.
And then I think the first president was Bill, what's his last name? From Bill Griffin from St. John's University.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Father and Emmett Corey was also.
And McCarry later on, yes. And oh my head is, I'm getting his name. I can see him so clearly.
Is it Frank Naughton? No? I
No,
don't know.
before him. Special ops. John, you remember?
Policeman?
Oh, I'll think of it in a minute. Let me think.
Was
Let
it
me think.
you something?
Oh, I went there for you.
Yeah. I was there.
No, it's I'll think of it. I'll think of it. Yeah, there's been it's I think at this stage, I know Linda, you said that membership is not as robust as it used to be, but the greatest contribution that the Roundtable is making is the annual journal. There it is.
It's magnificent.
Tremendous, a tremendous
Great.
contribution. It's going into the future. It's in libraries. It's the article archive online is so useful to students,
Mhm.
and the production values are beautiful. So if that's all the Roundtable does, keep
It's
doing
still
it.
worth it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the illustrations, like John said, you can't find them anywhere else. They're
And, we
fantastic.
can thank Frank Norton for that. He's not here right now, but he
Right.
was.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
The amazing thing that it was all done with
Hey,
very
Frank.
few people.
Mhm.
And, where there's enthusiasm, it goes a long way.
Oh, we should say one of our triumphs, Brother Emmett, may he rest in peace,
Yes.
was the famine dinner we had. Do you remember that, John?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it was supposed to be just like soup and a small commemoration, and then he invited Mary Robinson to come, and oh my God, then there was Secret Service and everything, and 400 people showed up, and that was something. That was a memorable highlight of the Roundtable.
That was in the basement of Peter and Paul, right, on the west side in Manhattan. That was very cool.
The soup was delicious.
It was delicious, and the memorial brochure was really good. Lots of good information.
And it just sort of snowballed. It came with a small idea, and then it just grew because people wanted to share and celebrate and commemorate those who came over during that famine time. And Mary Robinson was just an excellent bonus.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say thank you to Nancy Shea, who got me involved in the roundtable. She was the one who drew me in and said, you should really join us. And thank you, Nancy, wherever you are.
Oh, Nancy was wonderful. She was wonderful. Miss
She
her.
was really great. Was it James McHugh you were thinking of, Marion, as the president?
No, he was a very small, a very short period after Bill Griffin, I think, Jim McHugh. He died young.
Okay.
No, it's, I'll think of him in a minute. Sorry, I'm still thinking Mary Ellen. Nice to see you.
No problem. Good to see you, dear.
It wasn't O'Rourke, was it? No.
No.
And we did other things just besides having the talks and the journal week, because I know I led a few of the Irish genealogy sessions, and that was in the days before anything was online.
Right. And the Irish Mass at St. Patrick's.
Guilty.
Also,
Yes.
For a small
Hi, everyone.
organization,
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Frank McKenna. I just want to thank John for his friendship and, his insight and always being available. I put it in the chat that we're trying to have a lunch at the Wandsworth Inn in Wandsworth sometime soon. Anybody that's interested in, joining us, please do. And John, thank you for your talks over the years with the Irish Family History Forum. And by the way, that is Owen's brother that you see in the parish at church.
Oh, it is. Good.
Yes.
I haven't seen him lately. I'm gonna have to speak harshly to him.
Yeah. So I put my email in the chat. So if anybody would like to join us, it'll probably be on a Wednesday afternoon. And we went to it before Christmas. So if you're available, let me know and I'll tell you exactly when it'll be. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's Sheila. Can you hear me? Sheila Ridge. Okay. Sorry to barge in at the last minute, but I have the journal in front of me so I can name all the presidents. Okay.
Oh, great. Good.
Okay. The first president was William D. Griffin from 1980.
I just remembered it's Charlie Laverty I couldn't think of. Sorry.
Oh, okay. 1984 to 1985. Then we have John T. Ridge, 1985 to 1986. Then we have James McHugh, 86 to 87. Marion Casey from 87 to 1992. William Griffin from 1992 to 93. Emmett Corey, 93 to 95. Walter J. Walsh, 95 to 97. Frank Norton, 97 to 2003. Charles Laverty, 2003 to 2007. And Hugh O'Rourke, 2007 to 2011. And then John has been president ever since then. So
Good old Charlie Laverty. He was a pisser. What a guy to talk to. He was a lot of fun.
You want to talk about basements or offices? You should have seen Charlie's storage unit. Unbelievable. And it's all coming to NYU.
Oh, good.
Good. Excellent.
Good.
I want to ask him about St. Patrick's Day, but maybe not.
So Marion, can I ask you a question? Ed O'Shaughnessy here.
Hi, Ed. We emailed occasionally. Yes,
we have. Thank you. I'm a transplant out here across the continent. My family left New York City in the early 20th century and moved across the river to New Jersey. Then World War II brought us far away. But I inherited my great-grandfather's part of his library, which is in an old secretary desk. And at one point it had over 200 books. And I know because somebody at one point numbered the books that I inherited anyway. And I'm going to have to downsize in a couple of years, and I'm looking for a place to send them where they will be appreciated. Their first editions, books from the late 1800s to the early 19th century. And at one point, I thought about giving them to the American Irish Historical Society, but I'm not going to do that. So, would the NYU be a place to send those things?
No, they're not really taking books is the problem.
Okay.
I do think you
Okay.
should approach Notre Dame first. I think they are very good stewards of books, especially rare books. And then second would be BC.
I'm sorry?
Boston College would be number two, definitely.
Okay, Boston. Good.
Yeah.
That's what I need. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The ladies' Ancient Order of Hibernians, their records are at Boston College.
Yeah, I'd like them to go to a place where scholars can access them. That's
They
the
will.
issue.
Both of those
Yeah.
will. They're great. And
Okay.
they're better with books than we are. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, John, this has been great.
Yeah.
Enjoy
And
it.
thank you all for all of you that have tuned in and stayed with us. I mean, it's a reflection on you, John, that everybody's so interested and wants to hear what you have to say. And, thank you for all you've done. So as you keep telling us, you're not going away. You're just stepping down as president. So,
You better not be. You better not be.
right. So he's
Okay.
so involved. But,
Thank you, Linda, for organizing this. It's really great, and for recording it. Very important that John's.
Yeah, no, it's great. We've been recording all the Zoom sessions, and I'm realizing it's very valuable to have for the record, and everybody can access it after the fact. Someone was asking the question, is it going to be recorded? The answer is yes, it'll be recorded, and we'll post it up on our YouTube channel in next week or two. So anyway, thank you, John, for everything. This has been great. And thank you all for tuning in. And we'll see you at the next one. And check if you haven't gotten your journals, drop us a line and we'll make sure we'll get them. Okay.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.
See you all.
Bye.
God bless, John.
God bless.
John is right.
See you, Mary.